Hi everyone, and welcome back to the 300 Bird Challenge. This year we're trying to see 300 different bird species. Watch that graphic in the corner of the screen. With each new bird we see, it fills up gradually over time. In this week's video we're hoping that some of the very first spring migrant birds might be arriving in the area, so we're going to try and track down some of those. We'll also take a quick look back over the last couple of months to see how we're faring on this 300 Bird Challenge, see what birds we have seen that we're pleased about, some of those we might have missed, and I'm also going to give you a bit of a tease over some of the plans we're starting to formulate for places we might be going over the course of the rest of this year. Stay tuned, we're going to be back after this. Okay guys, a bit of behind the scenes for you. We were just filming the intro to this video. Suddenly Sara noticed a grey catbird fly past. That's a new bird for the year. It was fairly quiet, it didn't do any calling or anything like that, but it's a pretty cool bird, glad we've seen it. Maybe later this year we'll get a bit more closer up footage and some behaviour of that bird, but it's one I really like, so happy to see that. Anyway, let's get on and take a look around Colonel Sam Smith Park. Between the North Creek lookout and the car park, the usual common species were fairly active this morning, including this cardinal. And this obliging blue jay on a dewy branch. And of course there were the usual white-throated sparrows, chickadees, and so on. We made our way further into the park and looked out onto the marina. We saw buffleheads, this one's a female, goldeneye, and you can hear some long-tailed ducks in the background. Okay, so far, just the grey catbird in terms of new species. We were hoping also for red-winged blackbirds, a handful of reports of those in Toronto and southern Ontario in general as that species starts to move further north. I thought it'd be interesting for us to take a look back at how we're doing so far in this 300 bird challenge. Some of the species we're pleased to have seen, some of those we've missed, and also maybe just take a look at the numbers, how they compare this year to how we were doing last year. So let's dive into that. Take a look at this chart. The blue line tracks the number of bird species that we saw in 2023 up until the 12th of February, which is up as far as our last video. Now this red line shows our count for 2024 during the same period. We got off to a bit of a slow start this year, partly because we had less time off work than we did the previous year, and partly because, as longer time viewers will know, my camera lens broke partway through January of this year. But since the end of January and into February, we've started to gain a lead over last year. We're doing pretty well so far, and we're fairly happy with where we are. Having said that, there are some birds we had seen in 2023 that we haven't yet seen in 2024. Some of them are more common species that we will see sooner or later: song sparrow, northern flicker, brown creeper. Some of them are a bit harder to find. Now, missing the snowy owl at Amherst Island is hurting us, and so is missing the Townsend solitaire in the last video, but overall, we're pretty happy with where we are. Let's get back to Sam Smith Park. Just taking a look out over the marina here, and there's some scorp out there. Now, back in episode 1, we called lesser scorp, and on further reflection and with feedback, we think perhaps it was just a greater scorp. In the meantime, we've been looking for a lesser scorp and haven't found one yet, and I did say that if we didn't find one for a while, I'd reduce the counter. So unfortunately, although we've added grey catbird, I now have to take the counter back down because we miscounted a lesser scorp earlier in this series. So that puts us back where we started in this video, but we'll continue to push on and see if we can find anything else. We continued looking around Sam Smith Park, hoping for any new spring arrivals, such as a song sparrow or maybe a red-winged blackbird, but there wasn't much out on the lake, and just more of the common species nearer to the car park. Okay guys, we have some family commitments that we have to take care of, but we won't go birding again tomorrow, so this video will continue. Just the one bird today, the grey catbird. Cute bird to see, so happy about that, but it is just the one. Let's see if we can find some more tomorrow. As to where we're going, I have no idea. At the beginning of this video, I did tease that we'd talk about some of our future plans for destinations this year. You'll have to stay tuned and find out where that's going to be, because I'll talk about it in the next part. In the meantime, we'll be back after this quick break. Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 2. We have come to a location we've already been to this year, but we've got good reason for it. We're in Hamilton at Windermere Basin Park. There have been reports of a green-winged teal. It's a bird we haven't seen so far this year, but this particular one is a special green-winged teal. It's a Eurasian green-winged teal. We're going to head out there and take a look, see if we can find it, and on our way I'll tell you a little bit more about it. The green-winged teal comes in an American form and a Eurasian form. In Europe, these two forms are considered to be separate species, but unfortunately for us on our 300 bird count, here in North America, these two forms of the green-winged teal are considered to be the same species, just different subspecies. This footage from 2023 shows the American version of a green-winged teal, Anas creca carolinensis. Note that vertical white line, the so-called vertical shoulder stripe. The Eurasian version of a green-winged teal, Anas creca creca, lacks this stripe and has instead a horizontal white stripe. A few things were going to make finding this bird difficult. Conditions were awful, freezing cold, really windy. The birds that were present were hunkered down and distant, and there were American green-winged teals present too, like this one, although that does mean we now get to count the green-winged teal at this point, even if it is the American one, but we continued to look for the Eurasian one. As we looked, a juvenile bald eagle flew overhead, and then thankfully, after this, another birder spotted the Eurasian green-winged teal, in the opposite direction to where we were looking, of course. It's tricky to make the bird out in this footage. There's a bit of distance between us and it's snowing quite heavily, so there's a lot of snow between us and the bird, but in this photo you can see two teals side by side. The one on the right, with the horizontal white stripe and no vertical shoulder stripe, is the Eurasian teal. Really glad to have seen this European visitor. Now, we did see the American one first, so that's the one that we counted, but yeah, still good to see the Eurasian green-winged teal. It is absolutely freezing out there. We really struggled. My fingers are killing me. Struggled with the tripod on the scope, struggled with my camera and everything, but we did get the green-winged teal, so that's a new one for our year, and it's nice that it was a fairly special one. Even if it doesn't count as particularly special in North America, it counts as pretty special to us, so that's all that matters. We ran into another birder and he gave us a lead on some scotters. We're going to try for that, and then we'll see what else we've got in store for the rest of this video, so stay tuned. We're going to take a drive to another part of Hamilton. We'll see you there. We visited a couple of spots on the shore of Lake Ontario in the hope of seeing some scotters, but conditions were pretty rough and we didn't see much beyond Canada geese, some distant gulls and red-breasted mergansers. Now, the rest of this video might be a bit of a bust. We're going to take a gamble. The last few videos I've been moaning about how there's snowy owls around in southern Ontario, or hardly any anyway. There have been a few. One of my subscribers asked us to talk about the process a little bit and how we decide where we're going to go and what birds to see, what locations we go to. Well, in the last few minutes, Sara has been checking eBird and a few other birding sightings websites to try to find out where snowy owls have been seen. So a handful here and there over the last couple of weeks in kind of rural southern Ontario, just outside of towns and that kind of thing. So for the rest of this video, I think we're going to drive around a little bit and see if we can find ourselves a snowy owl. Stay tuned to see how that goes. Also, towards the end of this video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the plans we have in terms of travel for the rest of this year to try to give us a bump on that 300 bird species challenge. So stay tuned. We're going to drive around Ontario at almost random. We'll talk to you on the way. We'll be back in a moment. We left Hamilton and drove west to a recent sighting near Copetown. This was a bust though, so we went back to eBird. Here's what we tend to do. When we're searching out a specific bird, we type its name into the Explore Species box. Scrolling down below the bird details, we enlarge the range map. We then zoom to the particular area that we're able to travel within until we see darker clusters which represent more sightings. Once you zoom in far enough, you begin to see specific location pointers. Anything red represents a sighting within the last 30 days. Like this location near Barrie. It can also be helpful to open the date filters. Here you can set the month to the current month, February as this was being filmed, and set the year filter to current year. This will leave behind only the red pointers. Large pointers represent established birding hotspots. Small red pointers are personal hotspots or chance sightings of a bird away from any established birding location. Clicking the pointer will bring up the dates that the bird was sighted and who spotted it, though I have hidden the names in this case to hide their privacy. This process is a little bit different if you're using the eBird smartphone app, but the general idea is the same. Time to head back towards Toronto, and then north on the 400 to that red hotspot. The location is named Menacing Wetlands. We'd been once before, last year, and we'd seen horned larks there, so we were a little bit familiar. We passed Canada's Wonderland as we headed towards a general area known locally as the Snow Belt. This is a loose area east of Lakes Huron and Superior where snowfall is generally greater, where cold winds blow east across the lakes, picking up moisture and warmth before forming snow, which falls on this approximate area that I have highlighted here. As we passed north of Barrie, the snow became more apparent until we finally reached Menacing Wetlands, which didn't look like much of a wetlands at all at this time of the year, but did look like a great environment for snowy owls. We drove the potholed dirt roads, checking a few specific locations, but I'm afraid we're still without a snowy owl. This just isn't a good year for snowy owls. They've been sighted from time to time in the province, but the ones that are around are extra nomadic this year. They just don't stick around for very long. Case in point, this particular menacing snowy owl hasn't been reported since we were there. Sorry guys, no snowy owl for you. Time for a quick break while we all just get over it. Okay guys, we spent a lot of time driving around Menacing Wetlands looking for that snowy owl. It didn't work out for us. Drove around for about an hour and a half, we had lunch, waited around. It was pretty snowy though, actively snowing, so we couldn't really see too far, so a bust, unfortunately. We then drove to kind of North Durham region. There were reports of Bohemian waxwings, about 100 of them in a flock, but since it took us about an hour and a half to get there, they probably had left by then. They're very nomadic birds, just looking around for food. So we now have come south because there were reports of a fox sparrow at Lynn Shores. We're going to see if we can find that. We're pretty determined to try to add one or two more bird species this weekend as the light fades, so stick with us as we try to find this fox sparrow. We'd heard that the fox sparrow had been seen near the southernmost bird feeder, and we're very familiar with Lynn Shores, so we walked straight to the location. We could hear various sparrows in the brush when suddenly the fox sparrow appeared for us, foraging for discarded seed in the snow. Fox sparrows are rufous and grey streaked large sparrows that aren't uncommon, but they're certainly quite shy. There's a great deal of variation in the plumage of fox sparrows, and there are, I believe, 18 different subspecies, which are themselves divided into 4 groups. Those fox sparrows in Ontario are part of the red fox sparrow group because they're more brightly rufous red in their colouring. Okay guys, we tracked down the fox sparrow, happy with that. We got pretty good looks at what is normally quite a shy bird, but it was on show for us for a few seconds there, so pleased with that. I think it's time for us to leave Lynn Shores now, but in a moment I'm going to just talk to you briefly about some of our plans for the rest of the year and maybe get some feedback from you guys to see what you think maybe we should do with some of our spare time towards the end of the year. Anyway, we'll be back in a second, so stay tuned. With the sun setting, the birds had all hunkered down, and we only really had some deer left for company. Okay guys, it's starting to get pretty dark here at Lynn Shores, so it's time for us to leave. But before we do, I said I'd talk future travel plans. Look what arrived in the mail. That's right, we're going to Florida. We're allowed to do that. If you watched from the beginning of this series, you'll know we set out some rules. One of those is we're allowed to go anywhere south or east of the province of Ontario. Basically that coincides with a couple of migration paths, so the birds there count. I hope you'll join us on that adventure, but I also have a question to ask of you. We have another week, maybe 2 weeks of vacation that we can take, but it has to be in either autumn or winter at the end of 2024. Where do you guys think that we should go? We want to try and get the best birding bang for our buck. In other words, where's a good spot for us to go, where we can get the most species in that amount of time. If you guys have any suggestions, we'd be more than happy to hear them. I would just say don't suggest Peely, because we're planning on going there in the spring anyway. Okay, so it's time for us to leave. Thanks for watching this video, hope you enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the like button, because that means more people might find the channel. We really appreciate your general comments on top of your suggestions on places to go. Also, if you're not subscribed, if you could please hit that subscribe button, and anyone that hasn't hit the bell icon yet too, that will give you a notification when we post a new video. Enough from me. Thanks for watching this video, happy birding, and we'll see you soon.